the human thinking stack. This is a concept that I have developed to help explain why we think the way we do. And again, our thinking is very well adapted to living here on Earth, but in spite of that wonderful adaptation, sometimes strange things happen. So why is that? Well, it's because our thinking has some constraints. So what we have is a case, because we're high performance, where we want to think fast, but we want to think cheap. And when I say cheap, why I mean that we want something that is not filled with resource. Our brain, believe it or not, takes up about 20% of the energy consumption of what we eat. So we've spent a lot on this already, and we want it to do the best we can. And to do the best we can, what has happened is the body has structured the brain. In other words, it's not all doing the same thing. It's very much one part doing this, one part doing that, one part doing another thing. And this concept that I have developed originally in the data communication industry. And there you have what's called the communication stack, sometimes called the ISO-OSI model. And what I said was, maybe human beings are using something similar to this. And what this means is that our thinking can be divided into layers. And these layers talk to each other. And the 4 layers that I think of are starting with reflex, and then habit, and then morality, and then judgment. And let's talk about these in that order. So, reflex. Reflex is thinking that actually doesn't happen in the brain. Reflex is thinking that happens in the rest of your body. It's very fast, it's very simple. Now, if you go to the doctor's office and the doctor hits your knee and it kicks, that's an example of a reflex. And what's going on there is that the sensors and the actors are very close to each other, and they don't need a lot of intelligence. They just have to handle things. So when you're standing, or when you're holding your hand and it stays still, this is all due to reflex. This is reflex level thinking. The next level up is habit. And habits are basically things that you do and you don't think much about them. You just do them. When you take your shower in the morning, are you thinking about taking your shower, or are you thinking about what you're going to be doing in the rest of the day? That's an example of a habit. Another good example of a habit is if you, one classic example would be, suppose you're on the phone and somebody talks to you and they start talking in the very sing-song voice that says that they've been doing this 1,000 times before and they don't care about you. They're using habit. That's habit handling the speaking, okay? Next up is what I call morality. Now, the common definition of morality is good, evil, and things like that. And I've extended that definition a little bit. Instead of a question of good or evil, morality is something that you have made up your mind about. You've thought about it already, you've made your choice, and you don't have to think very hard about it anymore. Now, another good example of morality is if you're playing a sport, okay, and you're ready to hit that ball and okay, and if you've done that 1,000 times already, you don't think much about it. That's an example of morality and habit kicking in. But the first time you do it, That's when you use the highest level of your thinking. And the highest level is judgment. Judgment handles everything that's new. So the first time your parent gives you that baseball and says, I want you to hit that, why, that's judgment thinking. Now, again, the judgment thinking handles things that are new. The other feature about judgment thinking is because it handles things that are new, it's kind of slow and it's kind of clumsy. But what it's doing is it's teaching the other layers. It teaches morality and it teaches habit. And that's when you get into sport thinking. So that's what we have. We have these 4 thinking layers. We have reflex, and again, reflex is handling the very basic processes. Holding up your hand, standing, balance. These are all things that are being handled by reflex, and much of reflex goes on outside the brain. Next we have habit. And habit is when you are doing something that you've done before, you don't think about it, you've done it so many times that it's really not happening in your conscious level unless you want it to. And then we have morality, and morality is things that you have thought about, you've made your mind up about them, you don't have to really think very hard about it anymore, you just got to do it. And then finally we have judgment, and the judgment layer is the part that handles things that are new. When somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I got a new computer program, you're going to learn that new computer program with judgment. Okay? Now, in our civilized society, almost everything is new. We use an awful lot of judgment. And I'm going to talk about the sort of the yes but of that in our next video. The next video is about panic thinking and sport thinking.